This week in Idaho, Boise parents file a $50 million claim over child pornography by school staff. Also, parents are outraged after a pastor and daycare director faces sex charges. And Owyhee County deputies act as ICE agents under a new agreement. Also, a judge issues an injunction, particularly on that immigration part, against Idaho's House Bill 83 related to immigration law. That and so much more. This is the Yocal Idaho Midweek Report, where we give you an overview of the news in Idaho for the last week. Welcome back. I hope you had a wonderful week and a blessed one at that, especially with the amazing weather we've been having lately. It is not hard at all to be very happy with what the Lord has given us, especially with the weather. On that, and a friendly tip, because of the weather and the beauty of spring, I went out and did some traveling. I think it was like Friday of last week, something like that. And I saw a ton of wildflowers, at least down here in the southern part of the state, that are blooming. So might be a perfect time to take a little bit of a day trip to get out of town and into the mountains. That mid to high elevation, not low, because most of us are usually in lower areas and high population areas, but that mid to high elevation, there seems to be a lot of beautiful flowers. I saw the lupins are just about there at this point. It's really pretty. And then you have a bunch of those yellow flowers. I need to look up what exactly those are, but they are very pretty. And there's certain areas of Idaho that are blooming a ton. But enough about the blooming part and back to the news that sometimes can be beautiful, other times can be frustrating. The first half, as I talked about, we'll be going over some high interest cases and charges, plus some other fun stuff. Then for the middle, there's some more court stuff happening related to abortion, and also some talk about expanding nuclear here in Idaho. And then closing us out, we'll have updates on forest management, stuff that most Idahoans would like to hear because we don't like choking on smoke a ton. It's nice to have a break from that, and hopefully the Trump administration and the conservative majority in Idaho will be able to do stuff to help with that. And also the less glamorous, but something that's been going on for a long time, the Water of the U.S. issue. Has some updates going on with that, and we'll close on that. As we hinted, two parents have filed a $50 million tort claim against the Boise School District, alleging that Gavin Snow, a special educator assistant at the Valley View Elementary School, produced child pornography involving their children. The claim submitted on April 14th follows Snow's suicide on January 10th, which occurred as Boise police attempted to arrest him on child sexual abuse charges after evidence of exploitation was found on his electronic device. The parents, whose names are withheld to protect their child's identity, accused Snow of using his position to exploit multiple students and create child pornography. The claim also alleges negligence by the district and school staff, citing failures in training, supervision, and reporting suspicious behaviors. Named in the claim as potential defendants are Valley View Principal Rick Jordan and District Title IX Coordinator Jason Hutchinson. The parents seek damages for future care, counseling, and emotional distress, with total damages no less than $50 million. Superintendent Lisa Roberts acknowledged the breach of trust in an April 8th letter, apologizing for the trauma caused and outlining new district policies, including prohibiting staff from having cell phones during certain activities, requiring 2 staff during bathroom assistance, and installing Dutch doors for visibility. In conclusion, the district and parents' attorneys declined to comment on the pending litigation. District officials emphasized their commitment to transparency and student safety in the ongoing situation. And on a similar topic, Georgie Johnson, a respected mountain home pastor and director at the Next Dream Center Daycare, they have it NXT, hopefully I said that right, was arrested April 25th on charges of human sex trafficking and sexual penetration with a foreign object. The Elmore County Sheriff's Office began investigating Jones on January after alleged victims provided evidence, leading to his arrest. He is currently held at a $1 million bail as authorities continue to speak to additional victims. Parents related to this, like Kirsten Tracy, expressed outrage not only at the allegations, but at the lack of communication from both the daycare and local authorities. Tracy said she learned about the arrest through Facebook, not from the facility where Jones was deeply involved in daily operations. I'm disgusted, I'm angry, and very disturbed of not only the sheriff's department at this point, but daycare facilities in general, she said. Jones, a military veteran and former Person of the Year, remains under investigation as locals grapple with shock and demand transparency from those trusted with their child's care. And then getting out of all that dirty stuff there, Owyhee County, Idaho has become the state's first agency to join the federal 287G program, allowing sheriff deputies to act as Immigration and Custom Enforcement, or ICE, agents. Sheriff Larry Kendrick signed the agreement in February, following encouragement from President Donald Trump and Idaho Governor Brad Little for local law enforcement to assist in federal immigration enforcement, something you may remember if you have regularly tuned into the Midweek report. Wink, wink. Under the program, selected deputies will be trained to stop and question individuals suspected of being in the country without authorization, and process federal immigration charges if they are arrested for state crimes. Supporters, including Kendrick, obviously, say the move aligns with the county's conservative values and demonstrates support for Trump's administration. However, immigration attorneys and advocates warn the program may erode trust between law enforcement and the community, particularly among Latino farm workers, and raise concern about racial profiling, referencing past abuses in other states. Key bit being in other states. Despite ICE covering technology costs for this program, the county must fund salaries and overtime for it, though, a factor that has led some agencies elsewhere to withdraw from the program. The agreement took effect on February 19th, but deputies have yet begun training, so it'll be a little bit before it gets going. And it might be a little longer before it gets going because of this next story. A federal judge has issued a preliminary injunction blocking enforcement of Idaho's new immigration law, House Bill 83, while a lawsuit challenges its constitutional proceedings, which if you want to learn more about the bill, go check out our bill breakdowns. We have one on it there. The law, which was modeled after a 2023 Texas statute, creates a state-level crime of illegal entry and illegal re-entry for individuals without proper immigration authorization and for those previously deported. These charges could be only brought if the individual was suspected of another crime. So police can't just go along and pull someone and tell me if you're here illegally or legally. They have to already have committed some crime previously for them to then check their records. Governor Brad Little, for context, signed the bill into law on March 27th, and it took effect immediately. Hours later, U.S. District Judge Amanda Brailsford granted a temporary restraining order, which she later extended to a preliminary injunction. The injunction blocks Idaho from enforcing the new entry and re-entry crimes, citing likely violations of due process clause and federal preemption under the U.S. Constitution as the reasons for it there. As for the lawsuit that brings these, it was filed by the ACLU of Idaho and other groups that argues that the law is unlawfully intruding on federal immigration authority and could result in irreparable harm to those affected. The judge found the plaintiffs had standing and faced a credible threat of prosecution. However, the law's supporters maintain it targets individuals involved in other crimes and is intended to assist federal deportation efforts, not per se singling out people. The Idaho Attorney General's office is reviewing the decision and has stated it will continue to defend House Bill 83 in court. Provisions requiring cooperation between state and federal authorities remain in effect, but with this, the new state crimes are currently unenforceable. If you like that first batch of our stories and are enjoying the Midweek Report so far, do us a favor and hit the like and subscribe/follow button, depending on the platform you're on. It helps us stay connected with you and helps us reach more folks who love Idaho just like yourself. And speaking of the courtroom, we've had a lot of that lately. The U.S. District Judge Deborah K. Grasham ordered Idaho prison officials to allow media witnesses to observe the preparation and administration of lethal injection drugs during executions. These steps have been hidden from public view up until now. This ruling comes just as Idaho lawmakers have made the firing squad the state's primary method of execution, in response to failed lethal injection attempts and ongoing difficulties in securing executionary drugs. Something that we've already talked about a little bit. Also, you can check our bill breakdown on this exact bill that did that. But the decision made by Judge Grasham was prompted by a First Amendment lawsuit from major news organizations, insisting the public has a constitutional right to witness the full extent of the state's most severe penalty. Idaho officials argue that the secrecy was necessary to protect the identities of those preparing the drugs and to ensure the process's integrity. But the judge dismissed these concerns as exaggerated, noting the anonymity could be preserved with face coverings, and that executions have historically been open to public scrutiny. Critics argue that such mandates undermine the state's authority to set its own executional protocols and prioritize security, especially as Idaho prepares for the controversial return of the firing squad. But for now, Idaho cannot proceed with executions until it upgrades its facility to provide for the required media access, plus for the firing squad element there, highlighting an ongoing tension between judicial power and state sovereignty. And staying with courts and the highest one here in Idaho, on Friday, April 28th, the Idaho Supreme Court heard arguments over whether state officials drafted biased and misleading ballot language for a proposed abortion rights initiative. For many conservative Christians, this hearing represents an important moment in the ongoing struggle to uphold the sanctity of life in Idaho, something that is a little rare across the country. The initiative, brought by Idahoans United for Women and Families, how could you be mad at a name like that, seeks to add exemptions to Idaho's abortion ban for emergencies and fetal viability. State officials used fetal viability in the ballot title, a choice the initiative's supporters claim is confusing and prejudicial. But the Attorney General's office defended their wording, arguing that both terms are essentially the same and that the language was neutral, not favoring either side. Conservatives and Christians, for their part, are watching closely, concerned that the initiative, if passed, could erode Idaho's strong pro-life protections, holding that every child is made in the image of God and that the language used in the ballot should reflect the gravity of the issue, not with obscure medical jargon or ambiguous terms. As justices presented both sides about terminology and fiscal impact, the outcome remains uncertain. For Christian Idahoans, however, the hope is that the court will ensure clarity and fairness so voters understand exactly what is at stake: the lives of the unborn and the moral direction of the state. And speaking of voting, Idaho voters face a pivotal decision in this May for 27 school districts seeking approval for over $223 million in bonds and levies. For conservatives, the core question is, are these levies truly necessary, and how will the funds be spent? A close look on that at the district proposals reveals most levy dollars are earmarked for staff salaries, basic operations, and facility maintenance. For example, Lakeland's $50 million two-year levy will fund teachers, safety personnel, and curriculas. Even if it passes, 25 staff positions would be cut in this case. And then over in West Bonner, failure to pass a $1.7 million levy could shutter 2 elementary schools. Some districts, like Valley View, have maintained supplemental levies for a while using them to cover teacher pay, technology, and curriculum. Others, such as Shelley and Filler, are asking for bonds to build or expand schools to address overcrowding and outdated facilities. The cost to taxpayers varies in these levies, with them typically ranging from about $40 to $136 per $100,000 of assessed property value, often reduced by state property tax relief, though. While Idaho's conservative tradition prizes low taxes and fiscal restraint, many districts rely on these levies to maintain basic educational services. Voters must weigh the need, as each county must, for the need of accountability and efficiency against the risk of deep cuts to local schools. And then a little bit of a hard pivot here, but going from the classroom to nuclear, sometimes those things mix. Utah and Idaho and Wyoming have formalized a new regional coalition to advance nuclear energy development, something we would say is pretty encouraging, following the Built Here Nuclear Summit in Draper, Utah. On April 29th of this year, Utah Governor Spencer Cox and Idaho Governor Brad Little and Wyoming Governor Mark Gordon signed a Tri-State Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, if that big word's a little hard to say, I had a hard time there, to coordinate efforts on nuclear infrastructure, accelerate nuclear development, and advocate for federal policies that support innovation and private investment. To do that, the agreement outlines collaboration in aligning energy policies, developing crucial infrastructure, navigating regulatory and environmental challenges, and expanding workforce development related to nuclear. The state also hopes to work together to advance energy reliance, ensure grid reliability, and maintain affordable energy for residents. I think that's a pretty good thing. We all like our very cheap power here in Idaho. If you don't know how cheap it is, go look it up. It's kind of crazy. The summit hosted by Governor Cox brought together industry leaders, investors, and policymakers to establish Utah as a national hub for advanced nuclear technology. The MOU also includes a partnership between Utah and Idaho's National Laboratory to focus on energy research, workforce training, and technology development, with plans for a new advanced nuclear energy institution in Idaho. Officials described the coalition as a significant step towards creating a regional energy corridor anchored by nuclear innovation, positioning the western states at the forefront of the next generation of energy technology. If you liked any of these stories and there's stuff that you haven't heard before and others that would love to hear it, please don't hesitate to share this with your friends and family. Your shares help us spread the word about our beautiful state and help local Yocal Idaho grow to be a staple for every Idahoan. And staying with the topic of nuclear, Idaho's officials and the U.S. Department of Energy agreed to a waiver of the state's 1995 nuclear waste settlement. Something I didn't even know about, and you probably didn't either, allowing spent nuclear fuel shipments into Idaho for research at the Idaho National Laboratory, or as we all know it, INL. The waiver specifically permits a high burnout fuel cask from Virginia's North End Power Station to be transported to INL, with an arrival expected in 2027. This research will support the licensing of extended storage for spent fuel at 54 nuclear plants across 28 states, helping sustain the U.S. nuclear reactor fleet, which, if you didn't know, generates about 20% of our nation's electricity. The agreement also enables INL to manage small amounts of spent fuel from university reactors, preventing potential shutdowns due to storage limits. The original 1995 settlement had restricted such shipments amid environmental concerns. Governor Brad Little emphasized the state's commitment to both innovation and environmental protection, while federal officials highlighted the importance of research for national security and energy independence. The waiver marks a new chapter for Idaho's role in advancing nuclear technology and supporting America's energy future. And going from the laboratory to the great outdoors, Idaho's wildfires have grown more intense in the last several years, something that all of us as Idahoans can attest about. I don't like choking on smoke, and I don't think you do either, leaving sadly homeowners in fire-prone areas facing soaring insurance rates and sudden policy cancellations, something we have been reporting on. In response, the Idaho Department of Insurance has launched a mandatory survey requiring all property insurers in the state to submit detailed data about their policy, premiums, and coverage locations. Quote, "We know the market in Idaho is changing," said Sharon Hull, Marketing Oversight Bureau Chief. "Wildfire season has been getting a little bit more intense, so we want to get this information to see. Does this data tell us what's happening to our market? So maybe there's something we can do to help mitigate these issues." End quote. Of the 91 property insurance companies operating in Idaho 2 years ago, up to 25 have stopped renewing some or all of their policies due in large part to wildfire risk. The department hopes the survey reveals trends and support legislative solutions to stabilizing the market and protecting Idaho homeowners. Insurance companies have until May 20th to comply, as the state seeks awareness and relief for those at risk of losing their home and coverage. And speaking of lands, this last session of the Idaho legislature approved a significant funding boost for the Department of Lands, targeting wildfire prevention with cutting-edge technology. Among the most forward-looking investments is the rollout of AI-powered fire detection cameras across Idaho's forests. These smart cameras, capable of identifying smoke and heat signatures in real time, promising to alert emergency responders faster than before, potentially stopping wildfires before they spiral out of control. Granted, prevention would be nicer, but this is very nice if it gets out of hand. Lawmakers cited the success of similar systems in states like Arizona and California. Don't know if it's been a success there, but I'll take your word for it, where AI has already proven its worth by reducing response times and limiting fire damage. Idaho's new funding not only covers these cameras, but also supports firefighter bonuses and upgrades to fire equipment, positioning the state at hopefully the forefront of wildfire management and innovation. This step reflects a national trend, harnessing artificial intelligence as the first line of defense against increasingly severe wildfire seasons. With this investment, Idaho aims to protect its communities, landscapes, and natural resources, blending tradition with the technology that may be tomorrow. Pivoting from wildfires and coming down here to the Treasure Valley, the Idaho Transportation Department has announced the long-awaited Highway 16 corridor connecting I-84 to Emmett will open a year ahead of schedule, now set for 2027. This will be the Treasure Valley's first new freeway in more than 40 years, providing much-needed north-south access through the rapidly growing valley here. The accelerated timeline comes thanks to efficient management of state funds, rare to hear that statement said, and a budget surplus. The project includes multiple interchanges at I-84, Franklin Road, Ustick Road, US 20/26, and State Highway 44. This controlled access highway will allow drivers to maintain highway speeds without stopping, something that is going to be so nice for many families that have to travel between Ada County to Canyon County or from Gem County to Canyon County or some variation thereof. The investment represents Idaho's commitment to building infrastructure that serves our growing communities while respecting agricultural needs. Construction is currently progressing well, as for the reason it's ahead of schedule, with extended working hours and some nighttime detours expected though. When completed, hopefully, this transportation corridor will support local businesses, reduce congestion, and help maintain our quality of life while enabling responsible economic growth, something I think we all would love. Hey there, if you've made it to this point in the Midweek Report, probably means you like hearing stuff about Idaho and enjoy our content. So maybe consider subscribing here or go and checking us out on our Substack as it continues to grow and subscribing so you don't miss any of our future content. And speaking of illegal immigration, Guillermo Alejandro Morales, oh my goodness, that took so many takes you don't even know, a 37-year-old was arrested Thursday in Denver by the U.S. Marshal Service Task Force. Morales had previously fled Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, after allegedly resisting arrest by the U.S. Border Patrol and Idaho State Police in March. The pursuit ended in Washington on March 28th, with the first judicial court for Kootenai County issuing an arrest warrant charging him with eluding. Then on April 15th, the U.S. District Court of Coeur d'Alene issued a second warrant for assault on a federal officer. After evading multiple agencies, including the State Police, the Idaho Department of Corrections, the U.S. Border Patrol, Homeland Security Investigations, and the U.S. Marshal Service Task Force in Coeur d'Alene and Spokane, attempted to locate him in Post Falls and the Spokane areas. Investigators later determined that Morales had fled the region and relocated to Denver. The USM Greater Idaho Fugitive Task Force developed information leading to his location and coordinated with Denver authorities to make the arrest. Morales is expected to be extradited to Kootenai County here shortly. Speaking of another hot topic, Elon Musk and Tesla, Len Anderson waited 4.5 years for his Tesla Cybertruck, but the excitement faded as harassment on Idaho roads intensified. In recent months, Anderson and fellow Cybertruck owners like Mike and Mr. Green have faced tailgating, confrontations at stoplights, and vandalism, all linked, they believe, to the political backlash against Tesla CEO Elon Musk. As you may remember, earlier this month, vandals struck a Tesla service center in Meridian, causing about $114,000 in damage, with 16 new Tesla trucks being tagged with red spray paint, and the word Nazi was scrambled across the building. The FBI is now investigating that one. But on the road, Anderson describes being bullied, quote, "It's like I'm being bullied, like in grad school, like that. I've never felt like that since I was a kid," end quote. Green recounts the frequent obscene gestures, verbal abuse, and even physical damage to their truck. Despite the escalating hostilities, these owners insist their choice is not political. Quote, "Flipping me off doesn't hurt Elon's feelings or change his policies," said Mr. Green. "They're hurting people who don't deserve it," end quote. And coming to our second to last story about politics, specifically related to voting, after nearly 10 years of service, Ada County's mobile voting unit will be retiring following the May 2025 election. Since their launch in 2016, these units brought voting to high-traffic spots. However, the Ada County's election office recently announced the expansion of a permanent early voting locations that now provide the sufficient flexibility for voters, rendering the mobile unit unnecessary. The Ada County Clerk Trent Triple acknowledged the impact of mobile voting, stating, quote, "The mobile voting unit was a great resource for voters during the early voting at a time when there were few permanent early voting sites," end quote. He encouraged voters to utilize the new permanent early voting sites, including the Kuna City Hall, Garden City City Hall, Star City Hall, and the library at Bone Crossing. While the mobile voting unit will be available for the last time from May 5th to the 16th at the Ada County Election Headquarters, officials say it may still be used in special circumstances if needed. The shift marks a new chapter in Ada County's efforts to make voting accessible and convenient for all. And coming to our last story here, a little bit of more of a snoozer one, but something that's been going on a long time here in Idaho. The Clean Water Act, or CWA, enacted in 1972, established federal authority to regulate pollution in the nation's waters, including Idaho's rivers, lakes, and wetlands. However, the definition of waters of the United States under the CWA has remained contentious and unclear for decades. A landmark case, Sackett v. Environmental Protection Agency, originated in Idaho when Michael and Chantel Sackett sought to build a home near Priest Lake. The APA halted their construction, citing the presence of federally protected wetlands. After a 15-year legal battle, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in 2023 that the Sackett property did not fall under the CWA's jurisdiction, significantly narrowing the definition of the WATUS, or WOTUS, I think is how you would say that, to include only wetlands within a, quote, continuous surface connection, end quote, to navigable waters. Following the ruling, the EPA began seeking public input in 2025 to clarify implementation of the new WOTUS definition, focusing on terms such as relatively permanent waters and continuous surface connection. This change means Idaho wetlands and streams may no longer be federally protected, shifting more responsibility to state and local agencies. Despite these legal shifts, Idaho faces ongoing challenges. In 2023, 58% of the state's sewage facilities violated CWA standards at least once, highlighting persistent water quality issues. The evolving federal definition of protected waters continues to impact Idaho's communities, industries, and environment. And speaking of impact, I hope you make a wonderful impact on Idaho, because I have to go now. Thank you for listening to the entire report. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If you liked the Midweek report, make sure to check out our other content, particularly on our Substack, as we continue to grow that with more wonderful content. Also, if we missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to us via email or on Twitter by tweeting us at @LocalYokalIdaho. With this small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most interesting and important stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now. I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.